Hello students and friends. Today I am going to tell about homeopathic materia medica. Before start, please subscribe to this channel. Today we will discuss about Lycopodium. 1. The intellectual type. Lycopodium as an idiosyncrasy corresponds to the homeopathic medicine Lycopodium clavatum that is prepared from the homonymous plant. It is an intellectual idiosyncrasy. What do I mean by that? That he does a lot of thinking. Not in the sense of natrum muriaticum. Natrum muriaticum is easily offended or hurt, and her thoughts have to do with emotions and relations. She is emotional, not intellectual. Lycopodium, on the other hand, is intensely intellectual, although sometimes it may seem to be emotional as concerns a certain secondary behavior. He, and I say he, because it is mainly a male idiosyncrasy, functions mostly at the level of intellectual psyche, and especially by pure thinking and logic, and in a much lower degree with his emotions. That doesn't mean that he is cruel or mean. Not at all. He simply filters all things with his thinking. That's the way he functions. For example, when he gets in touch with new things or persons, his main care is not to feel but to understand. He wants to know causes and mechanisms for all things. He wants definitions for all things. From what parts are they composed? How do they function? What's its purpose and usefulness? He has that great tendency to fill all those little boxes of his brain with information, with data. His mind works like a computer which needs information hierarchically classified in order to function, or else it is blocked. It is like the operating system windows in a computer. You open a window, then a file, then a document, and so on. You also need software programs to deal with any given document. You need information. That's the way pure human logic works, and since Lycopodium is a purely logic person, he needs to fill his brain with information about anything in order to function, even in areas like emotions, where logic is not always wanted. Somebody could say, if this is the normal procedure of any brain, what is special about this idiosyncrasy? The special thing is that there is an exaggeration of logic and pure thinking that dominates over his whole existence. Don't forget that idiosyncratic characteristics are but normal functions or properties that are exaggerated, imbalanced. Take for example natrum muriaticum. Any person keeps some things for himself, that is, he has some degree of introversion, but in natrum muriaticum this is exaggerated to the third degree, and it becomes an idiosyncratic characteristic, a specific imbalance of this idiosyncrasy. Quantitative change in introversion finally becomes a qualitative change. From normal introversion we move forward to pathological introversion. The same thing happens in all idiosyncratic characteristics. Let me give you another example. There is a certain normal degree as concerns tidiness and programming. If this is exaggerated downwards, it becomes the characteristic imbalance of sulfur called untidiness and sloppiness. On the other hand, if it is exaggerated upwards, then it becomes the characteristic imbalance of nux vomica called fastidiousness and rigidity. Lycopodium is so intellectual that in some rare times of self-introspection, he wonders if he ever had any true emotions, any real deep emotions that were not the product of mere guidance by his thinking and ideas. He wonders if he had ever really lived. Has he ever really lived and felt, instead of just thinking? This strange and extreme sensation is actually the result of the clear predominance of intellect/logic over emotions. Being intellectual, of course, has also its advantages. He is very capable of classifying things and ideas, very good in finding the correlations among things and ideas, extremely capable of capturing wild ideas, original ones, fascinating and innovating, able to draw new programs or to create new, alternative, and radical theories, either scientific, philosophical, religious, social, or political. That's the reason why he can be a very good writer, scientist, teacher, or philosopher. He can also be a very good advertiser or movie writer as concerns script and imagination. But, although he is so capable in producing and understanding new ideas, he lacks the ability to put these ideas into action. This has to do with his special kind of cowardice towards colleagues and opponents. To put an idea, a plan into action, you need co-workers and you need to confront opponents. The thing is that he cannot manage other people, and especially syphilitic ones. This cowardice to confront others, and especially the competitive ones, marks his whole life. 2. The good kid. There are also other intellectual idiosyncrasies like sulfur and nux vomica, in the sense of predominance of intellect over emotions. We will examine their differences from Lycopodium in due time. Now, it's time to capture the essence of Lycopodium, and a good way to do this is to take things as they develop in time. Let's see how a Lycopodium mind is formed into the brain of a boy, or to be more precise, how a Lycopodium idiosyncrasy affects the maturing intellectual psyche of a boy. Just think of a boy who, while growing, realizes that he has a very good ability for creative thinking. He is very good at thinking, at producing original and new ideas, and at understanding and learning new things. It is so easy for him to be the bright student. At the same time, he realizes that he is not as brave as others when it comes to contradiction with other kids of his age or grown-ups. In fact, he is coward, although it is not so easy to admit it. He is living a phase of his life where competition and self-reassurance are extremely strong, so he must find ways to be competitive. Due to his cowardice, he can't be the white boy of his school or neighborhood. This is a role fit for Materia, as we have described so thoroughly. If he tries to do so, they will kick his butt. He may even have a strong body type, he may even have learned karate, but he hasn't got the braveness or nerve to stand up a fearful and competitive psychotic or syphilitic kid. So, what's left for him? He hasn't got the body, or to be more precise, he hasn't got the nerve, but he does have the brain. So, it's almost inevitable to culture his intellect so as to survive and to gain success and reassurance. Thus, he will have the tendency to become the bright student, the good boy, the intellectual guy, the civilized and cultured young man, or the sensitive cultured artist, the educated and refined soul, the swot, the nerd, the science boy, or the church boy. That's the easiest way to be acceptable and praised by his parents, teachers, colleagues, and society. That's his weapons towards girls, since he is not coward only against competitive boys, but he is also very shy towards girls. This is the easiest way to promote himself now and, of course, later on, professionally and socially. This route of life of his is defined by his main two characteristics. He is intellectual and coward as concerns competition and contradiction. If we want to give his essence in a phrase, we would say that he is coward, diplomatic, educated, ambitious, and intellectual. Let's analyze thoroughly, one by one, these unique characteristics. 3. The cyric vanity of the good, cultured, and refined person. His main basic passion is vanity. It's a cyric vanity because his main miasma is the cyric one. Natrum muriaticum, as said, is also cyric, but her cyric vanity takes the form of decency. What form does it take in the case of Lycopodium? It takes the form of good image or respected public image. You see, to wit, Many have hated money, but nobody glory. He is very ambitious, although he does not shout about it or even admit it. At times, you see, it's indeed a Cyric ambitiousness. How, on earth, do you expect it to be loud and clear? He is not interested in material things, he is not interested in satisfying physical urges and needs like psychotic Medorinum. He is not interested in control of others like a syphilitic Lachesis. He is not interested in being the king like a syphilitic Platina. But, he is so much keen in gaining the fame or even posthumous reputation of the spiritual man, the educated, the refined, the deep philosopher, the avant-garde artist, the cultured thinker, the humanitarian, pioneering scientist, the active ecologist, the respected academic, the pioneering researcher, the hard-working scholar, the modern pedagogue, the idealist alternative physician, the humble spiritual master, the humble believer in esoteric philosophy, the humble, faithful, and educated Christian/Muslim/ etc., the idealist, well-educated politician, the researcher, pioneering psychologist, the inspired, theoretical, social reformer, the humble educated priest or monk, the famous, humble writer. His Cyric vanity has to do with his image towards himself and especially others, and even more, towards female others, not as concerns his physical image but as concerns his intellectual image, the image of his refined, cultured intellect and spirituality. All his actions tend towards the promotion of this image either in family, girls, school, job, or society. As said, it's a low-profile Cyric promotion, but that doesn't mean that it's not a very strong one. He wants medals, praises, prizes, recognitions, praising articles, interviews, publications, and not only in this life, but even after death. Even when he believes that he is worth the praise, and even when he is really worth it, he will not easily shout it out himself. He wants others to do it for him. So, often, he adopts the secondary behavior of the humble, modest, shy, calm, and worthy person. A person that seems to avoid publicity but on the other hand is thirsty for it. But, be careful, it's not that he is an empty barrel. Most of the times he is, more or less, worthy of praise, since he has read a lot, worked a lot, even dedicated his life to achieve these goals. He is qualified and has done much job. But, of course, in the syphilitic era that we live in, he just can't face his syphilitic ambitious opponents because he is coward as concerns contradiction. Moreover, they will employ any immoral or unlawful means to achieve their goals. He will work hard, but it is not a rare thing to employ flattery so as to serve his ambition. Though it's a low-profile, Cyric flattery, he can also be a self-seeker, a calculating person, that is, he will do public relations, avoid judging those from which his ambitions depend on, even compromise with slightly immoral situations so as to promote himself. He hasn't got the strict moral principles of Naturam Muriaticum, and being so intellectual he has the ability to fool even himself, as to his true intentions, so as to serve his ambitions. 4. Theatrical behavior, playing roles instead of just being. He is so keen of his public image that he usually adopts a theatrical behavior, a role, throughout his whole life. It's not a syphilitic, exaggerated and straightly intentional behavior, it's a semi-conscious behavior. He doesn't have syphilitic intentions to rule others or manipulate them. He only wants good fame, to be loved and recognized by others, a Cyric fame. In the end he becomes one with this adopted secondary behavior. He doesn't adopt this behavior only towards important persons, he seeks for recognition not only from a minister but even from the kiosk owner of his neighborhood, or even from his housemaid. He feels so great when other persons think, "What a good man. What an educated, refined man." His theatrical behavior is addressed not only to others but even to his very close ones, parents, kids, wife, and friends, and even to himself. He becomes one with it. If someone unmasks this behavior, it's not an easy thing for him to accept. He may find 1,000 excuses to reject it. He is so good in finding excuses, in arguing and covering himself to others and even to himself. He is so good in self-delusion, in blinding himself. And his main excuse seems so strong: "I try so hard to be a good man." 5. Mistrustful and at the same time gullible. Being himself theatrical, makes him mistrustful to others. If he is so theatrical to others, then others also may be theatrical to him. Aren't we all actors playing roles, he thinks. Another thing that makes him seem mistrustful is his natural tendency to want to know the causes and mechanisms about anything, his tendency to draw serious information to fill in the boxes inside his mind. He has this strong curiosity, by nature. If he is a patient, before coming to you, he may read books about homeopathy, surf in the web, or read scientific articles about it. Even then, when he comes to your office already informed, he will ask you to make a small lecture to him about homeopathy. His usual questions are: how homeopathy works? What are homeopathic medicines made of? Can you give me scientific data about the efficacy of homeopathy in my specific illness? How can I be sure that it was homeopathic drugs that cured me and not something else, for example placebo effect? Why doesn't the scientific community accept homeopathy? But if you convince him, that is, if you fill properly with information his brain boxes, then he may become a great fan of your ideas or methods. He is, indeed, mistrustful and impatient as to results, and is always asking himself and you if his improvement was indeed caused by homeopathic cure. But when finally convinced, he becomes a fan. This intellectuality of his is a two-edged knife. It makes him both mistrustful and at the same time gullible. Isn't life and homeopathy a fascinating thing? How can such a thing happen? You see, a syphilitic person is very capable to fill his brain boxes with the proper information and convince him about his theories and good intentions. A syphilitic lachesis will say to herself, "Who is this? He is an intellectual person. What does he need so as to be convinced? He wants scientific data, mechanisms, explaining and talking. I will give him whatever he wants. I will also flatter him that he is so smart, so educated and so refined. What else do I see? I see that he is very ambitious, he wants glory, idealistic theories, etc. I will give him the right baits. I will tell him that he can serve our ideals from an important position under my guidance, of course, and let him think that he can be caliph in the place of the caliph later on. His problem is that he judges others not according to their life and actions, but according to their false image, according to their theoretical declarations. Someone could say, if he is doing the same thing, if he is also projecting an image towards others, how come he doesn't suspect that others do the same? You see, the problem is that it's not easy for a Cyric person to beat the cunningness of a syphilitic one. He will find his weak points, and using any kind of tricks and intrigues he will manipulate him. His Cyric vanity and Cyric ambition is his most weak point. A syphilitic person sees that and puts the glory bait in front of his eyes. His conscience is shut down. If the syphilitic person is a woman, and even more a beautiful one, then she triggers one more weak point of his lust. 6. He feels exceptional as to his psychological cultivation. We must talk more about his vanity, and the best way to do it is to compare it to other idiosyncrasies that also suffer from vanity. Platina has a royal syphilitic vanity. She is the queen in all fields, or in specific fields like beauty, brain, personality, art, star system, media, education, or refinement. She is so attached to success, to be the first, the top, and never even the second one. Sulfur has a Boericke intellectual vanity. He considers himself a great thinker. He has those great ideas, those wild, original and philosophical ideas, and those pioneering ideas. If he were the prime minister, he would give also great solutions to all problems. You see, he is philosophizing about all things, and he has such good ideas. He could change the world if they just listened to him and his ideas. But he is just the theoretical type. He just can't put himself on a long and strict program. His weak field is organizing things and bringing them to action. That is the reason why success is most of the times far away from him. The only fields that he may have some success are theoretical fields and modern anarchic art. He is usually condemned to be considered as a great bubbler. Lachesis has a syphilitic vanity. She considers herself a cunning fox, and she is indeed. She is so confident that she can manage anything she undertakes, and life has confirmed her efficacy. She has a firm opinion about everything because she knows while others don't. Nobody can fool her. She foresees things. She is a good judge of characters. Further more, she is such a great manipulator of other people around her because she is cunning, flexible, hypocritical, and sweet talker. Materia has a psychotic vanity. His vanity has nothing to do with intellectuality or psychological culture. It has to do with his physical condition, great energy, and fearfulness. He's got a yang strong body, which he keeps fit and dressed with manly accessories, always showing off his manly and sexy physical. He feels robust, sexy, energetic. He has no limits and no fear. He is such a womanizer, such a wide boy, a hard guy. He can drink tons of alcohol, smoke dozens of cigarettes, not afraid to use drugs, not afraid of disease. He can please many women. He is the top as concerns enjoying life to the maximum. He is the man. Hyoscyamus has a syphilitic and insane vanity. When not psychotic, he feels that he is very smart, and he is very suspicious of others around him. When he becomes insane, psychotic, then he has the insane idea that he is something like Napoleon or Einstein, and that nobody can understand the depth of his thinking and greatness. Lycopodium usually has a Boericke vanity. He considers himself a smart person, an intellectual person with great capacity in thinking. He considers his IQ above normal, but many times if you ask him about it, he may say that he is averagely smart so as not to consider him vain. This is in accordance, most of the times, with his secondary behavior of the humble, good, refined person who is not allowed to be vain. He doesn't consider himself as a genius or top as Platina, but still, although he is not admitting it, he feels that there is something special about him as concerns intellectuality, education, culture, and refinement. Many times he likes to think that, someday, now or even after his death, his unique personality and intellectual contribution to the society will be finally recognized. Even if such a thing is not happening at the present, he feels good to know and realize that he is unique. But, despite these, there is a cowardice and lack of self-confidence under his image, for which we will say more later on. 7. Fields of vanity. What are his fields of interest to which his vanity finds fertile ground? He reads a lot of books systematically. He wants to know, to learn new things. He doesn't just read romantic novels like Pulsatilla so as to dream about happiness. He reads so as to acquire as more knowledge as possible. In various fields, he is fond of global knowledge and intellectual cultivation. Why so? Because he wants to show off, in a cynic of course way, the image of the cultivated, refined, and educated man. He expresses in all occasions what he has learned and even gives short lectures about it. He adopts sophisticated terms, analytic speech, wits from great authors or spirits or even from public wit. He is mainly interested in philosophy, psychology, metaphysics, history, politics, religion, science, and the history of scientific thinking. If he chooses the artistic field, he likes reading and discussing endlessly about pioneering artists and new schools. The field of interest is not so important as the way he occupies himself in that field. He reads systematically and greatly. He likes research, teaching, and writing. He is so keen to be considered an expert on his field. He is self-assured through discovering new important knowledge and enjoys the glory that accompanies such discoveries. He is so fond of writing books, articles, thesis, studies, bibliographical studies, essays, poems, novels, theatrical plays, books, and any kind of presentations. He is the greatest fan of seminars, conventions, lectures, debates, discussions and presentations, trying to play an active role and present his image through them. He likes to be one of the few fans of tradition or true knowledge, either in the fields of religion, science, philosophy, or ideologies. He is so pleased to consider himself one of the few pioneering thinkers that are introducing a new theory or a new ideology. It may seem strange that he may be fan at the same time of tradition and modern ideas, but that's a secondary difference. The common thing that underlies both behaviors is the phrase one of the few. That's his cynic vanity. 8. A special relation with nature. Lycopodium has a special relation with nature, not only in the sense of natural environment but also as to its mysteries and laws. He is so fond of learning about natural phenomena, laws, and mechanisms. We could say that he likes to be close to nature, but what he likes more is to talk to others about nature or watching documentaries about it. That's not a strange thing, since, as said, he is such an intellectual guy. Most of the times he thinks, talks or writes about something instead of just living it, feeling it and enjoying it face to face. In the same way he may think, talk and write about love or sex instead of loving actually and having sex actually. He says he is full of love, but it's not a feeling, it's rather a thinking procedure. He talks and reads much about sex, but he is not the Medornum sex machine and certainly not the great womanizer. You may see him talking enthusiastically about nature, and at the same time he prefers city life with its seminars, artistic happenings, cultural events and politics. Not that he is lying, it's a matter of intellectuality. Accordingly, he is so fond of traveling, especially to countries that differ a lot from his own country as environment and culture. Again, it is his tendency to learn about new things and ideas instead of enjoying them physically and emotionally. 9. A well-disguised cowardice under the mask of the gentle, mild, and civilized person. Now, let's proceed to an extremely important characteristic of Lycopodium, his cynic cowardice. Although very characteristic and intense, it's not easily noticed by the inexperienced eye. You see, he covers it with several excuses, not only to others but even to himself. Let's unveil it through examples from everyday life. He is disturbed and annoyed by several things, but most of the times, he rationalizes or philosophizes and gets over them, even when he is angry. He doesn't often express his anger, especially to strangers. That is the reason why usually he has the fame of the gentle or mild person, but this is just a misunderstanding from others or just a mask of his. It's not that he is genuinely mild, it's that he is a coward. He is so much afraid of contradiction, and especially physical contradiction. For example, he has a controversy with someone, non-relative. If the other person is aggressive and determined not to yield, and especially if he is a robust man, then Lycopodium, even if right, will yield. But he will find a nice way to do it, so as not to be called a coward. He will definitely play it safe, even if he is physically more robust than the other person. The real reason of his yielding is his tremendous but masked fear that he will be punched and will have to go around with a bruised eye. He will be ridiculed. He will spoil his image of the mild and cultured guy, not to mention his great fear that he will mess with authorities like police and judges. But what's more revealing of his care for his social image is that he will try to find a very nice way to yield. Being so intellectual, he is so good at it, he may even come out on top as concerns impression to others. He will usually say, "I am out of here, I don't want to lower the level of this discussion, I thought that we were civilized people." Okay, my friend, if you think that you are right, then you are right. It's okay with me. You have the right to your opinion and I have the right to mine. Time will show who's actually right. I am leaving now, I have more important things to do. Forget it. Let's put it aside. It doesn't worth the trouble to spoil our relation and hearts over such little stuffs. Let's drop it. If I said something that has offended you, then I am willing to apologize and say sorry, but you must admit that your behavior was also not the proper one. All the above are nothing but the masking of his cowardice through civilized secondary behaviors. He is the cultured and refined man, the gentle, mild, calm, and polite person, the generous, noble, and high-minded man. He declares democratic, liberal, peaceful, against any kind of violence, rational, reasonable, and fan of pluralism so as to avoid being beaten. Many times, when others fight, he may play the role of the peacemaker. Of course he does this only if he is sure that he will not be beaten. In all fields of his life, he plays it safe, in controversies, in loans, in economic matters and business, in personal relations, in everything. But don't be surprised that wherever he has full control either to his yielding wife or to his children, then his behavior changes drastically. He grumbles, he is very critical, he preaches and even shouts. A person who knows him outside of his family, for example a colleague, if found in such family scenes, will be surprised. He has such a different image in his mind about him. Such a dominant behavior is not often. Such a behavior may happen if he is highly educated and very successful professionally and he is married to a much younger and less educated low-class woman who is just a housewife. It may also happen towards his small children before puberty comes and with it, rebellion. But, as we will say later on, most often, his wife or mother or others are the dominant ones and he is the victim. We have talked about his fear, as concerns physical controversy. That doesn't mean that he will yield in an intellectual controversy as long as it is carried out in civilized terms. Being so intellectual and educated, he feels that he is in his field. He is very good in arguments, in discussion, in speech, in knowledge, and in flexibility. On the other hand, whenever he is going to speak in public, even on a matter that he knows very well. He will have enough stress and stage fright, but only for the first couple minutes, then he goes over it entirely and he is very fluent and successful. This cowardice is also present at his work. He is so afraid to get involved in controversies and conflicts with his colleagues and especially with his superiors. He is afraid of losing his job and very insecure in making a new start in a new environment. He even avoids controversies with his inferiors or with his employees. He hesitates to give straight orders to them. He feels so uncomfortable in behaving as a boss. Usually he will do most of the job trying to be a good example to his employees, and he will try to inspire them to work more. He will try to create a team spirit, be friends with them, motivate them with bonus or praises, use diplomacy, etc. Sometimes he may even prefer to do some of the job of his inferiors so as not to be in the embarrassing position to shout at them for neglecting something. This cowardice characterizes him in many other fields. He is very much afraid anything that has to do with authority, like police, judges, state, tax officers, etc. He is also afraid of loans and any kind of financial mess. He is so helpless against any possibility of public ridicule. He is so much embarrassed in such situations and so much afraid that his good social image, for which he so much cares, will be spoiled. He cares so much about what will others say. When we say others, we don't just mean society, but also job, neighborhood, family, and even wife. His cowardice makes him indecisive. Shall I do this or that? Should I take this decision or that? Should I get married or not? Should I change job or not? He examines one option a lot and he seems to reach a decision, but then when examining the opposite one he finds also very strong arguments in favor of it. You see, he is so intellectual. His indecision makes him postpone important matters, especially when it comes to divorce or change job. 10. Lust. His relation with the other sex is also defined by his cowardice, but it does have another very strong characteristic, lust. He has much desire for sex, but not so much as psychotic idiosyncrasies like medorinum or phosphorus. His desire is not so much physical, it is mostly intellectual. It comes from his head, from his mind, and especially from one particular sense, i.e. vision. He cannot help looking women, even if he is married and happy with his marriage, any kind of women, young, old, friends, relatives, anyone, anywhere. His eyes and brain are so active, the eye looks and the brain imagines, creating horny stories. He is mostly stimulated by semi-nude instead of nude, or by thinking instead of touching. You see, he is an intellectual guy. His sexual intercourse starts from the brain downwards. But despite his strong lust, his cowardice blocks him a lot. He is so afraid of getting the mitten, getting a cold shower. He is so afraid of public ridicule. Nevertheless, he can't help it. He can't stop flirting. His flirt is intellectual, indirect, civilized, and charming. It's not psychotic and straight. But when it comes to make the decisive move, then he hesitates. In fact, most of the times, he is waiting for his companion to make the final move and then go for it. This is not accidental. In fact, nothing is accidental in universe. All things have their causes, but whenever we don't know it, we tend to name things as accidental, a typical human egoistic behavior. Why doesn't he go for it straight to the end? Because he is afraid of getting the mitten, and furthermore he doesn't want to be accused of sexual harassment. If he is a teenager, most of the times he prefers masturbation instead of risking a cold shower. This cowardice invades his whole sexual life. He has such a great stress to satisfy his companion sexually, not to fail, that he often suffers from early ejaculation or loose erection. If such a thing happens, then he tries hard to help his mate come to an orgasm. Many times, in order to avoid early ejaculation, he tries to postpone his orgasm until his companion comes first. But sexual function is an autonomic function, and whenever you try to control things, then you may make a mess out of it. He can't relax and enjoy it, and what should have been a mutual joy becomes a stressful task for him. Thus, after the first sexual enthusiasm in a relation, he tends to lose interest. He may compromise by focusing his interest to the family and kids or to his job. Still, his lust won't leave him in peace. He is flirting other women, and most of the times, not the proper ones, and in the end he has troubles with his wife or with his mistress. Sex and affairs are the weak point of Lycopodium and the cause of his greatest troubles. Most of the times, it's a dead end. On the one hand, he has a great lust, and on the other hand, he hasn't got the ability to manage and balance things. Very often he is greatly attracted by dominant syphilitic women like Valerian. It's a syphilitic idiosyncrasy that is not easy to detect. She may seem cyric or a bit psychotic, but not syphilitic. Valerian tends to project a false image. She pretends to be dynamic, liberal, modern, and cultured. Although behind this mask there is an insecure, spoiled, ambitious, and egoistic woman. This false image of Valerian seems to be the ideal woman for a Lycopodium. He enters this affair, and not after long, his problems begin. It's so amazing to be able, through the knowledge of idiosyncrasies, to understand the essence of any relation and its tendencies, to realize the hidden masks, the secondary behaviors, and to know the primal behavior. It's even more amazing to foresee the possible end of such relations. You see, we, human beings, are so predictable, so not free. This predictability has to do with the great influence that idiosyncrasies have on our body and mind. It affects, from upwards down, our will and understanding, our thinking, feeling, behavior, vital energy, and body. 11. Neat and introvert due to his care for his public image. He is usually neat and tidy, but not so much as nux vomica. He is not fastidious. The reason he wants to be tidy is that he doesn't want others to criticize him or to make comments. He doesn't want to spoil his good public image. These two reasons make him diligent, hard-working, and punctual to his appointments. He may even go half an hour earlier to his appointments so as not to risk getting late. For the same reason, he tries hard to pay his bills and debts on time. He enjoys talking about several subjects and likes company, although he is at a certain, moderate degree introvert. He tries to preserve a good public image, so if he starts talking about his very personal matters, he may spoil things. But his tendency for flirting may drive him to talk about his personal with women she likes. It's just a way of flirting, although he seems to be very extrovert and sincere, talking about the troubles he had in his past affairs. Again, we come across his theatrical behavior. He presents himself as sensitive and troubled, but still cultured and worthy man. This way he can move a woman and have sex without being mistaken for a vulgar, lustful womanizer. Often, he makes a pass to women that are in distress. That is, after a divorce, a love disappointment, or a misfortune, he likes to imagine that he is the sensitive man that will save this poor woman from those vulgar husbands/boyfriends/parents of her Don't even think for a minute that this is a syphilitic, intentional and conscious behavior. He is not fooling others. In fact, he is only fooling himself, and indeed, he is so capable of doing this. He enters a role that becomes his way of living. That is the reason why old homeopaths used to characterize Lycopodium as the rat of couples. 12. Physical characteristics. He is aggravated by heat, but not as much as sulfur, who is one of the hottest idiosyncrasies. He has also other characteristics that make us think of sulfur, but not so strong as sulfur. He sweats easily, his sweat may be offensive, his skin is oily and has much gases. Sulfur has sensitive intestines, while Lycopodium usually has a sensitive stomach, retching, stomach burning, heart burning, weak and slowed down digestion. If he eats late at night, he just can't digest. He may wake up at night with heavy stomach, nausea, and even vomiting. On the other hand, if he eats the same food at midday, he is okay. Nevertheless, most of the times he can't go to bed hungry. Despite his dyspepsia, he likes food and tends, like sulfur, to overeat. Around 11 a.m. he feels emptiness to his stomach and wants to eat something, not necessarily in quantity. A great characteristic of his is that he almost always eats very hastily, even if he has all the time in front of him, even if he is having fun at a restaurant. He practically eats without much chewing. When his dyspepsia gets worse, he may be hungry, but after 2 or 3 spoonfuls he feels distension and satiety. 13. A Lycopodium woman. As already mentioned, Lycopodium is mainly a male idiosyncrasy. A woman Lycopodium can be found in 2 versions. The first version is the Boericke one. She is mild and introvert, but of course, not so much as a Natrum muriaticum. She is very fond of nature, quite romantic, and makes romantic, Boericke dreams about her future. She wants to live in the country away from noisy towns, wants to create a happy family and deal with art or social matters without great ambitions. The second version reminds of a mild Platina. She considers herself a modern, cultured and refined woman. She takes very good care of her look, has quite an idea for herself, and is flattered by male interest. She dreams of the one and only great love affair, one that will not be dominated by sex but by tenderness, dialogue, understanding, and friendly communication. Contrary to Platina, she is not a domineering person. She hardly expresses her anger, and she is not aggressive. That is, she has the typical cowardice of Lycopodium, as is not the case with Platina. 14. Idiosyncratic diagram of Lycopodium. Raw material. The plant Lycopodium clavatum. Miasmas. Boericke mental content and Boericke expression. Basic passions. Boericke vanity in the form of the tendency for a good public image. He feels unique as concerns psychological culture, attachment to Boericke ideologies, sexual lust, especially as concerns vision. Essence, main idea. Coward, diplomatic, indirect, civilized, ambitious, intellectual, Boericke. Person. Thinking. A evolutionary level. Being an intensely intellectual person, he has a great relation with intellectual psyche and a minor relation with sensual psyche. Often, due to his Boericke vanity, he deludes himself and does not listen to his conscience psyche. His individual will is influenced very little by his external will that has to do with material things and the material world, and very much influenced by his external will that has to do with sexual urge and psychic world. His happiness has to do mainly with his good public fame. He has a natural curiosity about physical and psychological phenomena and about knowledge in general, and this helps him come in touch with inner knowledge, truth, and God. But most of the time, he is full of theory and culture and has the fame of the spiritual man and not the essence of it. B. Influences. Cyric morality, that is, attachment to ideologies, Cyric cowardice. Stressful factors. Negative fame, public ridicule, rejection, when he gets the mitten, great responsibilities, unsettled matters, the possibility of a conflict. Controversy, fighting or beating, underestimation, lack of appreciation. Commitments, even the sensation that he is denied of his rights or of his freedom, domineering women, vulgar people, violence. He is very much affected by verbal and mnemonic thinking stimuli. See general characteristics of his intellectual functions. Systematic and well-organized thinking with great imagination and originality, very capable of understanding or creating new, original ideas. But due to his cowardice he finds great difficulties in applying these ideas in practice. D. Intellectual patterns. Cyric intellectual patterns that concern the public image of the mild, good and cultured person. He may not think that he is the first one, but he thinks that he is something unique as concerns quality, depth and originality of thinking, ability to adopt new intellectual patterns and change his intellectual content, but without necessarily change in his idiosyncratic attachments. He thinks he is a moral person, and most of the times he is, but it is not a rare thing to violate his principles due to sexual lust or ambition. Even then, he tends to cover his immoral actions with excuses. He has a great ability to blind himself. First he does what he wants and then he finds excuses for himself through well-organized theoretical arguments. Theatrical extroversion. While he is in fact introvert, he hides his personal inabilities so as to project to others, even to his very close ones, a good public image. Frequency. Very frequent to men and especially to intellectual and yielding men, rare in females. Emotions. Being a very intellectual person, his emotional charge is usually low. He doesn't experience deep emotions, although he masks that with the secondary behavior of the sensitive and cultured man, especially towards women. He does this because he knows that most women tend to appreciate sensitive and emotional men. We could say that he appears to have certain emotions because he thinks that it's the proper time to feel these emotions. For example, he has learned that sunset is a nice time for emotions, especially if you are with a woman, and so he convinces automatically himself to express such emotions and may declare that he loves her. It's as if he has seen many movies and he is acting according to what one should do in several theatrical occasions if he were the good, emotional, cultured guy. Extremely sensible and rationalist, although towards women he projects an emotional, sensitive, and romantic image because he knows that's what they want. Being intensely intellectual, it's not easy for him to feel conscious emotions towards other people. But towards nature, universal laws, and God, he can easily feel such conscious emotions, like a universal feeling and serenity. His intellectual emotions are shallow, controlled highly by his intellect, Cyric, and idealized. He often feels opposite intellectual emotions of low self-confidence and vanity due to his cowardice and Cyric vanity. Behavior. He very much adopts secondary behaviors, and especially the calm, good, sensitive, and cultured person. It's not a syphilitic behavior but simply a Cyric vain behavior because of his desire for a good public image. Intense attachment to good manners and to socially accepted roles. He is so much affected by public opinion. Intensely Cyric behavior. Controlled, shy, with intense Cyric ideals and tendency for a moral alibi. For all his actions, Boericke ambitiousness and tendency for socially accepted behavior. He adopts idealized roles for the purpose of a good public image, like the moral person, the liberal idealist, the cultured, civilized individual, the humble fan of esoteric philosophy, the romantic idealist artist, the sensitive, emotional male, the democratic pluralist, the active good citizen, the thinker, the philosopher, the humanitarian, the liberal feminist male, the hard-working and industrious person, against consumerism, the spiritual person, that is, against materialism, the idealistic ecologist, the fan of rationalism and scientific thinking, the good, obedient kid, the excellent student, the liberal, democratic father. Body, appearance, look. He takes care of his appearance. It can be either classic or sportive, but always taken care. Sophisticated speech, uses rare, complicated words or phrases, wits from public wit or great thinkers/philosophers, tendency for preciseness in expression and tendency for definitions of terms. His aim is to show off as the cultured, educated and refined person. Usual physical predispositions: dyspepsia, gastritis, colitis, hemorrhoids, balanitis, inguinal hernia, cyst of coccyx. Usual psychological predispositions: affair problems, early ejaculation, loose erection, anxiety. Homosexual tendency, cowardice, emasculation, phobic neurosis. Relative idiosyncrasies: Boericke sulfur, gelsemium, serinum. B. Lecture. During our first 3 lectures, we have described the 3 most representative idiosyncrasies of the 3 miasmas, natrum muriaticum for Boericke miasma, medorinum for psychotic miasma and lachesis for syphilitic miasma. Today we will analyze a very frequent, nowadays, male idiosyncrasy with Boericke psychological characteristics and expression. 15. Weak thermoregulation system. Lycopodium idiosyncrasy corresponds to the homeopathic medicine Lycopodium clavatum, which is prepared from the homonymous plant. Its name comes from the Greek word lycopodion, which means wolf's foot, because its flower has this kind of shape. Lycopodium has a peculiar relation with temperature. Often he resembles sulfur. He is hot, sweating and offensive, but not so much as sulfur. In quite enough other cases he will definitely say that he is mostly cold than hot. Many times he, himself, cannot decide if he is more cold or more hot. You will justify his confusion if you let me tell you what's his real problem. He has a weak thermoregulation system and it takes him some time to adjust in new temperature conditions and has difficulty to keep up for long a steady temperature. Thus, in a hot environment he easily becomes hot and after a while can't stand heat and wants air condition. Accordingly, in a cold environment he easily becomes cold and after not long he can't stand cold and wants clothing. If you see such a thing to a man, think of Lycopodium, although it's not one of his strong characteristics. 16. Gastric sensitivity. He's got a sensitive peptic system and especially a sensitive stomach. Other such peptic idiosyncrasies are phosphor, nux vomica and many more. He will tell you that around 11 a.m. he starts feeling emptiness to his stomach area and wants to eat something, not necessary much. But a great peptic characteristic of his is that as a rule, he eats very hastily. He practically eats without even chewing, in 3 to 10 minutes. The most, he has emptied his dish. This happens independently if he likes the food or if he is hungry or not. Be careful. He does this even when he has plenty of time and has no rush, for example, eating relaxed in a restaurant with friends. He will eat quantity, Even if his dish is full, his tendency is to eat up to distension, and since he is eating so hastily he will definitely eat more than he needed. Sulfur has that too, although most of the times he eats slowly. Lycopodium may tell you that sometimes although he is very hungry he may eat 2 or 3 spoonfuls and feel distended and can eat no more. This has to do with his hastiness and the fact that he doesn't chew his food. Usually after eating, especially if he eats a lot, which he often does, he becomes very sleepy. Food knocks him down, especially after lunch. If he sleeps, even not for long, then he is so refreshed. Sulfur, also, becomes sleepy after food. Many times, if he eats late at night he just can't digest, he will have some difficulty to become asleep, or he may sleep easily but he will have a disturbed sleep. He may wake up feeling his stomach heavy, distended or painful. He may even feel nauseous or vomit to relieve himself. He often wakes up next morning feeling lousy. If he eats the same food in lunch he will have no problem to digest it. It seems that his digestion is very weak after 11 p.m. and has a difficulty to digest rich food and especially pepper or spices. You may not see this in a young Lycopodium before his 30 because his peptic system is still strong and functioning well. Later on, and especially after his 40s or 50s, he begins to have weak digestion. He often has much gases, usually offensive ones, and is very relieved by farting. Although he likes beans, as years pass, he has a difficulty to digest it and it causes him a lot of gases. He likes food and enjoys it. It's not easy for him to wait when he is hungry. He wants to eat here and now. He stops his work and wants to eat. He may eat anything he finds handy, not being able to wait for a proper meal. At restaurants he may become full from appetizers and have difficulty to eat the main dish. Let me take you by the hand and show you how a basic idiosyncratic characteristic can run through all the existence of a person, at all levels. Lycopodium, as we will say later on, is a very intellectual idiosyncrasy. So, when it comes to eating, although he is greedy and tends to eat hastily, if his brain decides that he must eat healthy, then he will try to control himself, or if savoir vivre says that he must eat in a certain refined way, he will do it no matter what his body says to him. Accordingly, he may decide that he must eat frequently a certain food that has a bad taste only because it's good for his health. When time passes, he may even start liking its taste. Although he likes the taste of raw onions, they often cause him indigestion. If he eats a lot of cooked onions he may also have indigestion and many gases. Oysters and shells often cause a great deal of indigestion. After his 40s, many times milk causes indigestion. Although he likes its taste and wants to drink it, he may also have the same problem with yogurt. But there are 2 other idiosyncrasies that have a much more serious problem with milk: natrum carbonicum and silica. They don't only have indigestion problems after drinking milk, i.e. diarrhea, distension or nausea, but they also have a great aversion for its taste. I always refer, of course, to fresh milk. If you give to a silica or to a natrum carbonicum child milk with cocoa or chocolate, they may drink it, simply because its taste is covered, but still they will have problems digesting it. Individualization is a rule, not to say a medical law, for homeopathic medicine. You just can't give the same consultation to all patients even if they suffer from the same illness. If you force a silica child to drink a lot of milk every day, then you keep causing indigestion to it for his own good. There are of course cases of silica that don't have so many problems with milk, but as a rule, they do have. We shouldn't forget 2 things about milk. First, it is supposed to be specific and exclusive food for young cows and not for human babies, and second, it's not a food for adults, either adult cows or adult human beings. A baby has the enzymes to digest his mother's milk, but an adult doesn't have it, so many times, he has difficulty to digest it. 17. Intellectual and curious, wants to know how all things work. Now, let's proceed to his psychology, the field of main action of this idiosyncrasy is intellectual psyche, mind, intellect, logic. He is the cultured, educated, refined philosopher. He is coward but still has a high idea about himself. He is a fanatic book reader because he loves to learn new things. Why so? For two reasons. First, he has a natural curiosity to learn how all things work, and second, he wants to be educated and cultured so as to satirically show off to others or flirt women. There comes a Lycopodium patient to your office. Before coming, usually, he has already read some books about homeopathy and may have surfed the net. He will not come to you just because somebody else told him to. He wants to be informed before he decides to go. Despite his previous search, he will often ask the doctor to tell him about homeopathy, even before the examination. His usual questions are, what's homeopathy? What are the differences from academic medicine? How does it work? Where its drugs come from? What is the scientific explanation about their action mechanism? Are there any scientific data about all these? Can it help his case, and at what percentage, as statistics say? Why many other doctors don't accept it as scientific? Sulfur also has a natural curiosity and wants to know about various things, but he is the dirty, rugged, superficial philosopher. A student. Lycopodium will study systematically and in depth. He will read all text. Even the small letters or references, may make a diagram of what he has read so as to understand it, will take detailed notes, and he may even ask himself questions about the chapter he has read so as to be sure he has understood it. Sometimes he will try to make an imaginative lecture to others about it so as to help himself learn it in depth. On the other hand, Sulfur will be very superficial. He just wants to read the main points or those things that are possible questions at the exams. But he is usually smart, and if not bored by the subject, he will find it easy to get the meaning and pass the exams even with good grades. Sulfur is very good at mathematics, physics, and technology. Lycopodium is good at philosophy, literature, biology, and theoretical knowledge. Lycopodium wants to read something that will give him concrete knowledge. He won't spoil his time in reading novels or sentimental stuff. Unless he wants to show off to others, and especially women, that he is in as concern well-known writers. He will wit from what he has read, and go as far as to give a short lecture about a theme he has read, so as to show off to others, but still, it's a satiric show-off, an indirect one, while Sulfur, especially a psychotic one, has a more psychotic showing off. He will say, I know what I tell you. I am sure about it. I have read so much about aliens, and someday all these will be revealed. Knowledge and refinement is for Lycopodium, most of the times, a cultured way of flirting, a satiric, shy flirting. Medornum flirts with robust manly body and look, with his hot car and accessories, and with his wide boy style. Lycopodium flirts with his culture and refinement, with his mind. 18. The cultured, refined philosopher. He is the most fanatic attendant of lectures. You will always find many Lycopodium subjects in any kind of lecture. He is very much interested in psychology, philosophy, politics, economics, and self-improvement. Techniques, also history, ancient civilizations, computers, religions, nature, ecology, and science. If he has dealt with a certain religion, he will be the educated and informed believer. He will read all sacred books, even learn to wit. Phrases or whole sentences can refer to many stories or parables of these religious books. He will also read theological books and fathom the meaning of delicate theological matters, like for example the mystery of the Holy Trinity, etc. If he is fond of ancient Greek civilization, he will have read all the classic authors, master the language, and will always wit phrases, sentences, wise sayings, etc. But you may find a Lycopodium that is an atheist, but it's going to be a case of a cultured, idealist atheist. He will have many scientific arguments about the non-existence of God and will base his opinion on other scientists, on books, on researchers, and articles. The important thing is not the content of his beliefs, but the research that he has done to reach to such conclusions, and the many serious arguments that he has so as to support it. On the contrary, sulfur is more superficial to what he believes. He hasn't done much research, although he will superficially refer to many sources. He will be less willing to carry a serious conversation about his beliefs because he knows, because he has searched it and is so definite, even if he doesn't have strong arguments. Sulfur likes to deal with peculiar, mystery subjects, strange phenomena like the Bermuda Triangle, the ancient pyramids, alien civilizations, international conspiracies, the black holes of the universe, etc. 19. Gifted teacher and writer. Being very intellectual and wanting to show off, he has such a great tendency to speak, write, or lecture about his knowledge. So many authors, poets, lecturers, and academic professors are Lycopodium subjects. He can write essays, serious researches, studies, historic treatises, historic novels, metaphysical novels, ethical or religious essays, theatrical plays, movie scripts, etc. Bibliography, research, lectures, writing, and experiments are essential contents of his earthly intellectual Eden. His dream is to become a famous writer, poet, or theatrical writer, or even a simple school teacher. He is crazy about teaching and lecturing. He is so happy. He may be paid only the basic, but he is so happy that he has an audience. If his audience has also beautiful women, then he is not just happy, he is in Eden. Laughing, he is also crazy about research, as sulfur is. Wherever you see teachers that have written a few books or poems and have paid out of their pockets for their publication and belong to a small cultural society, fond of getting together discussing their works, then think first of Lycopodium and then of sulfur. The same stands bold for small groups of believers or philosophers that come together to discuss religious or philosophical matters. Be careful not to be dogmatic or prejudiced. What I have said is just a possibility and never a certainty. Even if it is a great possibility, almost a rule, there are always exceptions to the rules. 20. Self-improvement, culture. Being Boericke, he sincerely believes in ideologies that he is taught and for which he is convinced. He is a very good student and wants also to become a very good teacher or an academic so as to pass this knowledge to others. If his career involves techniques like yoga, praying, etc., then he practices systematically and hard and may spend his whole life in self-improvement and in serving a certain cause. He sincerely wants to evolve psychologically and become as better as possible. If he is a believer, he dreams of enlightenment, of becoming a saint and coming closer to God. If he is in politics, he will be a sincere idealist, always reading political books and fighting for his cause. If he is in scientific fields, he wants to be a prominent scientist and help humanity progress to a better future. He always wants to know how something works. Being very intellectual. Whenever he buys a machine or even the simplest electrical device, he will first read thoroughly the manual and follow strictly the instructions given. You can see this intellectual tendency even in a manual worker. For example, in a plumber, he may not have finished high school due to family conditions, but still, he will read newspapers and magazines, watch the news or documentaries on TV and read all kinds of books. What are his favorite movies? He has an aversion on low-cultured movies. Like some damn American ones, he prefers cultured European movies. He is fan of cultured famous directors like Kusturica, Bergman, Woody Allen, etc., not to mention that most of these directors are usually Lycopodium or sulfur as idiosyncrasies, so he feels so much close to them. He will not go to the movies just to pass his time pleasantly. He wants to learn something or to face dilemmas or to put himself in the place of the actors and wonder what he would have done in such cases. He wants the director to set several issues, moral, philosophical, social, political, etc. He doesn't like those fast and shallow American movies that have to do only with action, sex, and laughing. He wants to learn things or think about issues and then discuss it with his friends, partly because he likes thinking and talking and partly to show off in a cynic, cultured way. If a psychotic Medorianum goes to such cultured movies, he will either leave after 5 minutes or get bored or have a good sleep. Sulfur also likes intellectual movies, but not always as cultured as Lycopodium. Sulfur likes mystery movies, adventure movies, and scientific fiction. Movies like Space Odyssey or The Secret of the Lost Ark. He likes adventures and action but not violence and bloodshedding. Sulfur adores Agatha Christie, police movies, metaphysical movies. It's not a matter of thinking about ethical or other issues. He likes to use his imagination. He likes to be kept curious or else he is easily bored. He loves comedies so as to laugh and relax. When Lycopodium gets older and is tired from his job and everyday life, he may also want to see movies like the above, because he doesn't want to tire anymore his intellect. What kind of books does Lycopodium read or write? Let me give you an example. Metaphysics, as an analytic tool for the definition of the structure of human being, an essay about randomness versus destiny. Laughing, he will definitely read Heidegger, Nietzsche, Paulo Coelho, Freud, Darwin, Hermann Hesse, Yalom, etc. He so much likes sophisticated issues and sophisticated language, long complicated sentences, cultured words, and expressions not spoken by plain people. Insertions, digressions, subtitles, footnotes, and long bibliographies. He comments on several other great thinkers or writers or wits from great minds or public wit. Let me give you an example of a Lycopodium medical essay presented in a conference. The critical importance of kindness in everyday, modern homeopathic therapeutics is the title, and the subtitle is an attempt for an exposition according to Christian philosophy and tradition. Laughing. 10 pages for the lecture, 20 pages for footnotes and 30 pages for bibliography. More laughing. Moreover, he will show slides, diagrams, statistics, etc. 21. Thinks a lot of himself as concerned culture and refinement. He thinks a lot of himself as concerned culture and refinement because he has indeed done a lot of work on the field. He was so intellectual since child. Due to cowardice and shyness with girls, he couldn't be much of a womanizer or a wide boy. Instead, it was so easy for him to use his brain and be the good student, so he became the cultured, refined, civilized person that can talk almost about anything and have a unique opinion about anything. So, why not think a lot of himself? Why not consider him above average? If, as doctor, you ask him about his I.Q, most of the times he will tell you that he considers himself a little above the average. He doesn't refer so much to his geniuses but to his cultural level and refinement. Often, he will say that he has an average I.Q but don't believe his declaration. He either don't want to be mistaken as vain or pretends to be humble. You will be able to tell the truth because most of the times after his first response he will say, but I have read many books and I have a good ability to understand things. Lycopodium is not a syphilitic platina. He will not project himself in a confident, straight, and even vain or pompous, syphilitic way. You see, he is Boericke. He is burning for recognition and fame, but he so much wants others to do it for him. He is not like psychotic sulfur that may be such a babbler. Although he has done nothing great, he is not like the syphilitic vain platina who says, "Who the hell are you to dispute me? How dare you?" His expression is Boericke. He wears that humble, refined, gentle or democratic look, not the hypocritical, syphilitic of Alachisis. He doesn't want to rule over others by manipulating them. He just wants to have fame and recognition. He loves to be the teacher and have students, and especially female students, for profound reasons. 22. Cowardice as concerns controversy or fight. Nevertheless, he is a coward person. What's his cowardice about? He is afraid of controversy, not any kind of controversy. He is not afraid of verbal, civilized controversy. In fact, he is very good at it due to his intellectual nature, culture, fluency, and flexibility. If he is not in danger, that is, if he is not facing an aggressive, tough guy, he will kick the butt out of him verbally, not to rule over him or make him ridicule to others. He will, simply, take the opportunity to project himself and show how educated and refined he is, how unique he is. But if he has a psychotic, aggressive, manly Medorhinum facing him and he is afraid that he may be punched, then he will play it safe and gentle and will retreat in a refined manner because he is such a civilized person. For example, a Medorhinum driver does something wrong while driving, and a Lycopodium is put to danger. Lycopodium may even curse, but he takes care not to be heard loudly. If he is in fact heard and sees the raging face of his opponent coming towards him, then he hits the gas to go away as soon as possible. But, let's say that he is trapped and can't hit the road. The following dialogue may take place. "What's the matter with you? You nearly killed us?" The Medorhinum guy looks at him angrily and says, "Big deal. No harm done." "Big deal. Are you crazy? If I hadn't turned right we would have crushed." "Seriously? Are you calling me crazy? Maybe you need a punch to you ugly face." Medorhinum steps out of the car going towards him. Lycopodium immediately changes his tone of voice and says, "Come on, man, okay, I said something that I shouldn't, but, believe me, I got so scared that we'd crash. Let's forget it, let's be civilized, no harm done. No harm done. Nobody calls me crazy. For God's sake, are we going to argue about such little things? I may have said something, but we are only human. I apologize. Let's go on with our lives, we are all so stressed and busy. Good day to you." Laughing, You see how flexible he can be because he is so intellectual and at the same time coward as to fight. There is something that I don't understand. Why do you call cowardice this kind of behavior? What did you want him to do? Fight? Lycopodium, usually, doesn't admit to others or even to himself that he is coward as concerns fight, will not accept it even when the doctor asks him. If you ask him, if you can handle physically the other guy, will you insist arguing, then he may say that he will. But, it's such a rare thing for him to get engaged in a street fight. Why? Because he is afraid that the other guy will beat the shit out of him or may punch him in the eye. How on earth is he going to face others with a black punched eye? What will others and society say? Goodbye good public image. Goodbye manhood. Goodbye culture and refinement. He may also find some good excuses for his cowardice and tell you, I don't engage in fights because I am afraid that I may lose control and hurt others badly. Apart from feeling guilt, I am going to have so much trouble with the law. Sometimes he may also say, oh doctor, nowadays life has become so cheap, anyone can draw a gun or a knife and kill you just like that. 23. Preaching and rebuke. You see, he says to himself, I am not the muscle guy, if I get in a fight, they will beat the shit out of me, but I am so good at words so I will fight verbally. Don't think that these are fully conscious situations, it's more semi-conscious states or automatic responses. This is usually the case with idiosyncratic characteristics. If he fights with a young man, will he raise a hand? Rarely. He will beat the shit out of him with words, with verbal violence. He will say to him, what's the matter with you, young man? Who taught you to drive like that? For God's sake. You'll kill someone. You are a menace to the society. Laughing, he will keep saying things again and again, preaching, rebuking, reproaching and grumbling like he does to his poor wife if she's a yielding person. Does he express his anger? Rarely to strangers, but if he is in a dominant position or to his yielding close ones, then he does. For example, if he is a prominent university professor with money and status and he is married to a low-class, much younger woman, then he will be so oppressive. He will never hit her, but he will preach, grumble, and be very critical. 24. The coward employer or director. If he is the boss or director, he will manage things with his employees or inferiors, making use of his authority and position. But if his employee is a psychotic Medorinum who doesn't give a dime about anything, then he will be in such a difficult position. He will try to convince his inferiors to do their jobs by his good hard-working example, by bonuses, several other motives and gentle manner. He just can't face controversies. He isn't good in giving straight orders. He isn't convincing because of his gentle cultured manners. Sometimes he may do the job of his inferiors so as not to engage himself in a controversy. He may also refuse or avoid a promotion so as not to face the difficulty of directing others. 25. He tends to delude himself. Being a very intellectual person, he is very good at deluding himself and finding excuses for his negative characteristics or negative actions. He is so trying hard to have a good image, even to his close ones, that finally he deludes himself also. He will not admit to himself or others that he is a coward. He will say that he is a cultured, civilized person. Or he may say, I follow my principles, I am a civilized person and I am against violence. Or he may say, it's a foolish thing to be killed by someone crazy just for little things. Be careful. Never take for granted anything that a patient says to you. It's not so important to us if what he says makes sense or if he is right. If we want to diagnose his idiosyncrasy, we must see behind the mask, we must unveil the curtain of his illusion. Our aim is not so much the secondary behavior that he adopts, but his primary behavior, his real intentions that are beneath his behavior. We don't care so much about his declarations for culture and civilization, we do care about his cowardice. That and only that will give us the correct diagnosis, the correct medicine, and the successful cure. 26. The good kid. What's a Lycopodium kid like? He is the good kid, the obedient kid, and the excellent student. He is the one who will keep helping his poor mother at home, who is so tired caring of all the family and working at the same time. If his mother is a syphilitic person, and especially a lachesis person, she can do with him anything she wants to. He is her helpless victim just because he is a good kid and in fact a coward or yielding one that believes her moral and love declarations. He will try not to spend much money or buy expensive toys or clothes, just to relieve his parents financially. He wants his parents to be proud of him to the society, so he is as a good boy should be, obedient, God-fearing, gentle, respectful to his parents, teachers, and priests, always doing the right thing, hard-working and with the ambition to become a good citizen, always ready to offer to the society. His cowardice, intellectuality and civic ambition drive him to adopt these ideals and this secondary behavior. He will avoid other psychotic or syphilitic kids that fight all the time, do risky things, or are not good and obedient students. Instead, he will be among the first ones to participate to scientific projects, theatrical plays, cultural events, essays, etc. He likes reciting poems or a text to the school feast or participating to ecological activities. He will avoid all those boys' stuff that tend to reveal who is the most strong physically, the most risky, the most womanizer, or the manliest. If he goes to a karate school, his intention is not to beat other kids or show off like a Medorianum. He wants to learn how to defend himself against aggressive children, keep his body fit, and is fond of the philosophy that a true martial art represents. 27. Never beyond usual borders. You can also see his cowardice when it comes to loans, expenses, or financial risks. He is so afraid of loans, so afraid that he may find himself in the disgraceful position not to be able to meet his obligations. He will try to limit his expenses so as to meet his income. He is so ashamed and embarrassed if he is forced to ask for money from his parents, relatives, or friends. He avoids businesses that have a financial risk. He prefers to be a civil servant with a steady income, even if it is not much, as long as it is steady. He is so afraid of being fired and find himself in the position of searching for a new job. He is afraid of all kinds of authorities, police, justice, tax office, etc. He wants to have nothing to do with these authorities. He may even prefer to be the victim of an injustice or lose money, as long as he has no troubles with the authorities or other citizens. He prefers to present himself as a victim or as a big-hearted man instead of going to trials and controversies. He may say that God or life will eventually show who is wrong and who is right. If he is a lawyer, he will have the tendency to lead his clients to fair agreements instead of going to court and trials. 28. Intellectual sexuality. Another field where his cowardice is profound is sexuality and affairs. There is a great and distinct difference between being a sex machine like Medorianum and being a person who has intellectual lust like Lycopodium. His libido and sexual ability cannot be compared to Medorhinum or other psychotic, energetic idiosyncrasies. But he is so active. As concerns lust, when intellectually dealing with sex and women. He has a tremendous intellectual sexuality, a certain kind of brain lust. He gets so horny when thinking of unusual sexual conditions. His imagination flies to the extremes because he is so intellectual. He is fixed sexually more by his brain and imagination than by his body and senses. He gets so horny thinking of a lesbian scene, he so much enjoys seeing things, and that's the reason he tends to be a great peeper or a great reader of porn magazines or a great watcher or porn videos. He imagines sex with much younger females, nuns, or even close relatives. Many men that suffer from Oedipus complex are Lycopodium subjects. He is so fixed thinking of having sex with his female friends, although they are married or engaged, even to close friends of his, especially if they have problems in their marriage. He tends to flirt all mistreated by their companion, females. That's the reason why homeopathic doctors in the past have named Lycopodium as the rat of couples. He likes to sneak in every problematic relation, not like a Medorhinum, just to get laid. He wants to participate intellectually to the whole thing. He will have an affair with a married woman and then possibly marry her and even be a new father to her children. He may be rich and famous, and he is fixed by marrying a poor innocent troubled woman and be her savior. He dreams of creating a happy family. He will be the one that will offer her anything, as long as she appreciates him and loves him. He will be the good husband, the feminist, the democratic, and of course, the savior. 29. The best victim of syphilitic women. So, he tends to be the best victim of syphilitic women, especially when they are influenced by valerian or secondly by lachesis. Valerian will manipulate him so wonderfully that not only he himself won't realize it, but also many others around them. On top, he will feel proud that he is the savior of this troubled human being who has been so mistreated by other bad males or by her cruel parents. If she is divorced and has kids, he will love them as his own and spend time and money to raise them because he so much likes to have the perfect happy family. She will even let him think that he is the head of the family and the savior as long as she does all things her own way. He is the yes man, but he believes that all things are done after discussion and concession. There is a very good joke that suits perfectly Lycopodium husband. 2. Married men discuss about their marriages. What can I say? I keep fighting with my wife all the time because we both want to be the one to take decisions about anything in the family. There seems to be no solution. How are you going on? Thank God, we have no problems at all because we have reached to an agreement. We have shared all fields. No sheet. What do you mean? My wife decides about things that concern our family: financial, food, house, furniture, children, where to go on vacations. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What's left for you? It's a fair deal. I decide about our views, as a family, concerning political and philosophical matters. Laughing. You see, my male friends, that's Lycopodium. Some of you may laugh just because they recognize themselves in the above joke. More laughing. 30. The fear of getting the mitten. Another great field of his cowardice is women. He likes so much flirting. He flirts in a cynic, mild, polite, and cultured way, perhaps too mild. But when it comes to the final move, that is, to propose for a relation or lay a hand on her, then he is so afraid, he keeps postponing it and postponing it. He is so afraid that he will get the mitten. What if the woman denies his proposal? What if she tells others about it and he will be ridiculed? What if she gets offended, ironic and cruel to him? What if she spoils the good public image he has been building for years? So, often he keeps postponing and the woman finally gets bored and then things come to an end, they stay friends. He so much hopes that she will make the first move and save him from a possible humiliation. 31. Early ejaculation. If he is such a coward as concerns affairs, why not be coward, very sensitive and anxious as concerns sex? Most of the times he suffers from early ejaculation and secondary from loose erection or no erection at all. Why early ejaculation? Because he is so stressed when it comes to sex. Especially with a new mate. He is so afraid of failing to function as a man should. So afraid of becoming a ridicule. So he is so anxious to please his sexual partner at any cost. But, sex is an autonomic function and does not obey to the orders of the brain, it needs relaxation and no orders. His brain, his upper head, gets involved to the function of the lower head and messes up. Laughing. Sorry to speak like that, but I have to use expressions that are commonly used by men at their private discussions, so as to be clearly understood. On the contrary, Medorinum, a clearly physical guy and not an intellectual one, will grasp the woman and take her to bed to get laid here and now. His upper head has nothing to do with the procedure, his lower head has full control. At that time he doesn't care at all if his mate is pleased or not, if she is relaxed also and if she is a psychotic one that needs not much emotional participation, then she is also going to be pleased. Of course, if she is a Cyric one that needs love and romance to function, then a Medorinum partner is scarcely the ideal one. Lycopodium is so afraid of early ejaculation and has read so much about simultaneous orgasm, that he tends to delay his orgasm so as to please his partner first or at the same time with him. So he tries to postpone his orgasm by taking care of the woman. There are three possibilities. The first one is that he deals so much with his partner that he delays his orgasm a lot, the woman comes to an orgasm and then he deals with himself and comes to. But, it's more a brain and mechanical erection and orgasm, he manages to have an ejaculation with a rather loose erection and it's not as satisfying as it should be if he let nature do her work, her way. Nevertheless, he is so good at deluding himself so he doesn't pay so much attention to his physical satisfaction, his brain is pleased and his fame is saved since he has pleased his partner, he is a man, a male and has proven it in the battle field once more. Laughing. The second possibility is that by delaying his orgasm, his original hard erection becomes a loose one, he has lost timing. She waits for him to come into her with a hard erection but he is so loose that he can't even get in, not to mention inability for ejaculation. It's a disaster for him. He can't delude himself or her about it. He is so ashamed, so embarrassed. He tries to make it up to her by caressing her and trying to help her come. At least if he manages that, then he doesn't care about him. If he has to do with an understanding Cyric woman that loves him, then no big deal, but if he has to do with a psychotic demanding or syphilitic woman, then things are not good at all. If she is negative or ironic, then it's so difficult for him to have sex with her again. She has totally castrated him. Things get worse if she is syphilitic and uses this incident so as to dominate to their relation. Then he is helpless. She has found his weak point and makes use of it. The third possibility is early ejaculation. This happens if he tries to delay his orgasm at a certain late point, that is, when his orgasmic curve is close to the peak, close to orgasm. At that point, you are dealing with a one-way road. If you try to return back, then you spoil the natural procedure. And you have early ejaculation with low satisfaction both for him and for her. This is also a disaster for him. Is this something that stands only for a Lycopodium man, or is it something general? It's a general mechanism, it stands for all men. But it happens mostly to Lycopodium subjects because they have this tendency for intellectual interference, this anxiety to satisfy the woman, and so they mess things up. Often, if his wife loves him and is a Boericke and understanding one, then given time and patience he has no problem at sex, but if he goes with another woman and he is anxious to please her, then it's very possible that he will have such problems, at least at first. If such a thing happens to him once, a normal thing for all men at times, he has a blackout. He becomes so worried that it may happen again next time, so often, in the end, it happens again and again. A vicious circle has been formed. Then he starts rushing to sexologists, doctors and healers to find a solution to the problem that upsets his whole existence. Often, since he finds no solution, he tries to solve his problem by deluding himself and his partner. He gives an end to his relation so as not to face this problem again and start fresh with another partner. He may also stay in this relation, and since he gets no satisfaction from sex, he gets it by masturbating systematically. A Lycopodium homeopathic remedy can cure him from these sex problems. But, be careful. We don't cure early ejaculation by Lycopodium, we can only cure a Lycopodium person that suffers from early ejaculation that has the Lycopodium characteristics. When it comes to homeopathy, we follow homeopathic laws that origin from universal laws. We always cure the patients as a whole and not the illness. 32. Tendency for systematic masturbation. From his early youth he has the tendency to masturbate systematically. This is an idiosyncratic tendency, but things get worse due to social factors. If the sexuality of a boy wakes up at the age of 12 or 13 and has his first masturbation, and then in order to have a real systematic sexual life he has to wait for years and years, then the easiest thing to do is to masturbate systematically. If on top of that you are a shy coward with women Lycopodium guy, then what's left to you? Systematic masturbation. Masturbation is a natural premature sexuality, all things at their time, but if it is done systematically for years, and if it is continued while it's time for the mature sexuality to set in, then it becomes a pathological situation. Masturbation seems so easy and so handy compared to difficult love affairs. You don't need anyone else, you are on your own with your familiar loving self. Laughing, you don't have to face all those women around you that may turn to be bitches and after you fail functioning to ridicule you. More laughing. You see how things work in real life? First you have the idiosyncratic and miasmatic tendencies, then come the social factors of real life, and things take their usual predicted cause, that is, Lycopodium subjects tend to masturbate systematically or have early ejaculation. Isn't homeopathy a wonderful science? Isn't it a splendid combination of universal laws, scientific knowledge and real everyday human life? Even Lycopodium grown-ups tend to masturbate systematically and watch porn videos. They may be married, but if their relation is not good or if they have lost sexual interest to their wife, then they masturbate systematically or go to a horn house or cheat on their wives. 33. The brain lover. I have already mentioned that he may lose interest on his wife. This is a usual thing for Lycopodium. He may even love his wife, but soon after their relation or marriage, he tends to lose sexual interest in her, or he may gain interest in other women. He has this tendency to get very excited on a new relation, and then after a while he loses interest. Monogamy isn't his field, but on the other hand he isn't a Mediorinum guy that is capable of polygamy on the physical aspect. It's a dead end. His mind is so excited with polygamy and sex, but his body is not so capable on this field. He is not a sex machine like Mediorinum, for example. He is rather a brain machine, an intellectual guy with vivid and horny imagination. So he may not get divorced, but he masturbates systematically, or he cheats on his wife. He may even think of having sex with all the women of the planet while doing it with his wife or while masturbating. He is the brain lover, that is, his sexuality starts from his eyes and brain. He sees a low-neck dress or sees a sexy picture on a magazine and gets horny. He starts imagining several sexual stories, complicated ones, sophisticated ones, like his intellect, so he masturbates or he starts flirting around, enslaved to his horny imagination. Now he wants this woman and then the next one, even her best female friend. Today he wants the daughter and next day the mother. He fancies that he has sex with his best friend's wife, or affair. He fancies that he has incest sex, although he has enough guilt about it. He fancies that he has an affair with a much younger or much older woman. He has such a vivid, horny imagination. That's the reason why he tends to be a fan of polygamy communes or hippie states. 34. The image of calm, mild person. Lycopodium does not easily get angry, not is he the nervous person. Most of the times he also tends to be slow to talk and slow to move, except of course of his fast eating. You see, he is a idiosyncrasy. He often adopts that Buddha look and philosophy about calmness, and he is proud to declare calm, mild and peaceful. That doesn't mean that he isn't annoyed by many things or that he doesn't get angry. It means that he tends to adopt this image, this secondary behavior, because it suits his Cyric intellectual nature and his cowardice. He tends to be the cultured, civilized person. Irony makes him angry. Why? Because he thinks that they underestimate him. Injustice also makes him angry, especially if he is the victim. He also gets angry when someone spoils his cultured image or disputes him. He doesn't have any problem to discuss with arguments with anyone and about anything because he is so good at it, but when he faces those vulgar, psychotic comments or those ironic syphilitic comments, then he is so annoyed. 35. Indecision. Another characteristic of his is his indecision when it comes to critical matters. For example, he may be experiencing an awful relation for years and years before he finally decides to give an end. So many times he has thought to do this or that, many times he has examined the negatives and positives of each option, but at the end he is not sure what's right for him. So he keeps postponing his decision. Even if he knows what's best for him, even when he has reached to a decision, many times he hasn't got the courage to face the consequences of a critical move. His indecision has to do with his cowardice, with his care for his social image, and with his intellectuality that may produce opposing thoughts. His indecision in breaking a relation is not defined by his emotions but by his cowardice that prevents him from making the decisive step. Sometimes he has indecision about little things, for example about what clothes to wear or not, but usually this concerns big decisions like affairs, job, etc. In the case of affairs it may take him long to break it, but when he does it he is done for good. Rarely, he will go back. 36. Predominance of intellectual emotions. There is a predominance of intellectual emotions, that is, emotions that are very much defined by his thinking and beliefs. He is the intellectual guy and not the emotional, his field is the brain and not the heart. He is rational than sentimental. That's the reason why sometimes he feels as if he has no emotions. This is the result of his great rationality. He has the ability to change his emotions easily according to his thinking and beliefs. If he changes his beliefs, he will automatically change his emotions also. For example, if he reads about a new religious or philosophical system and adopts it as his ideology, then he starts seeing people, even close to him, from a new angle. He may decide that his girlfriend does not match his new ideas and his emotions change according to his new way of thinking and may stop loving her. You see how intellectual he is. That does not mean that he has no emotions at all or that he is insensitive, indifferent or cruel. It simply means that his heart feels what his head tells her. Nevertheless, you may see him very touched or even shedding tears while watching family, social or sentimental movies. He is also very touched and even filled with tears when somebody thanks him or when meeting a friend after many years. When touched, he feels so good and alive because he feels his emotions overwhelming him, and this is a happy change compared to a mind always having control on his emotions. 37. Seemingly extrovert due to image. He enjoys a small company consisting of a few good friends. If it has interesting women, the better. He doesn't like crowdy places and very loud music because his field is discussion, and so he wants quiet little places where he can talk, flirt and show off his culture. If he is with one or two close friends, he may even talk about his personals, although usually he keeps it for himself so as not to spoil his good public image. But, if he is with a woman that he likes, he may use a special kind of flirting. He may start talking about his personals only because he wants to project a certain image, the image of the sensitive guy that has been troubled by life and especially by a mean woman, the image of the cultured man, the idealist, the fighter for his ideals, the good father, the good teacher, the sensitive artist, the refined cultured man, etc. Is he tidy or messy? He is tidy, but he isn't fastidious like Nux vomica. He wants things to be tidy, especially at work, so as to do his job and not have any negative remarks from his superiors. Furthermore, he is tidy for reasons of good functioning. 38. Intellectual fears and mistrustfulness. He may be a little frightened about his health, but not as much as phosphor, arsenicum, or argentum nitricum. His fear is more an intellectual function than an emotion, since he is an intellectual guy. What do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. He did a blood test, and his cholesterol is at the borders of normal. He surfs in the net and reads medical books so as to cross-check if he has a problem. After being informed, he goes to one or even two doctors and asks, "Is my cholesterol normal? What is your opinion?" I have read that there are two opinions on the subject. What is your opinion? Should I follow a diet, or is it better to take medicines? What medicines are the best? What side effects should I expect? What's the prognosis in my case? How long will it take? You see, he is already informed. He has his opinion but expects from the doctor to be very well informed, having a firm opinion and supporting it by strong arguments. If the doctor seems to him a good and informed scientist, then he is convinced and will follow anything he tells him. He is not a stubborn, egoistic, mistrustful person. He is mistrustful until you have convinced him with arguments, statistics, researches and scientific image. He is mistrustful until you fill his brain boxes with the proper information and arguments, until you give him a satisfying mode of operation. Moreover, he may be mistrustful because he, himself, projects a certain image, a secondary behavior, so he may think that others also do the same. But, most of the times, if the other person projects scientific and rational arguments or a fascinating well-grounded ideology, he may even be so easy to believe and become a fan. That's the reason why he easily becomes the victim of syphilitic persons. The syphilitic person projects to him what he wants in order to persuade him, and he bites the bait and is hooked for good. You see, being so intellectual, he tends to believe more to theories, ideologies, and arguments instead of judging others by their actions and their real-life example. A Lycopodium woman is also very intellectual and cultured. She loves nature and wants to learn about things and physical phenomena. But she has a milder picture than the one that we have described about male Lycopodium. I have some difficulty in capturing the picture of Lycopodium. It's not easy to do such a thing right away most of the times. It's easier when you sit by me at my office and see a lot of idiosyncratic pictures passing by. Then you will identify idiosyncratic pictures because you will have real images to match with the theoretical images of a lecture or a book. Something else that will help you identify idiosyncratic pictures is if you already know a close person that has this theoretical image described. For example, if you, yourself, are a Lycopodium subject, or if your brother, father, or a friend is influenced by this certain idiosyncrasy. 39. Neat, clean, and cultured look. What's a Lycopodium look? What are the things that will make you start thinking of a Lycopodium idiosyncrasy? He will be neat, clean, and cultured as to his look. He will either be well shaved or have that well-oriented beard, the cultured one, that covers only the area of the mustache and the chin. If his beard covers the whole usual area, then it will always be well-oriented, well-cut, and even well-combed. It will not be a sloppy sulfur beard. But he may have a cultured horsetail or long hairs like some artists or poets have, but he will be freshly hair-washed and not dirty and oily like sulfur. He gives much attention in choosing his clothing, although they are never extreme or kitsch, not very expensive, not sloppy, not very modern, not very conservative, somewhere in the average and with some shade of culture. His manners are more distinctive of his idiosyncrasy than his clothing. He is gentle, polite, kind, talkative, and a bit shy, at least at the beginning. His language is always a sophisticated one and uses expressions that not ordinary people use. He will bring to you his file full of tests and information, but not as full and strict organized as Nux Vomica. These are some basic characteristics of Lycopodium, so as to have a first basic glance at this idiosyncrasy, especially as concerns his psychological profile. As we go on describing other relative or different idiosyncrasies, you will get more information about Lycopodium by comparative references. The final and complete identification of this or any idiosyncrasy is accomplished at clinical practice after years of successful course as a homeopathic doctor. Thank you and have a great day. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel.